Sup bitches? I'm reliably informed that I'm terrible at pimping my stuff. So here I am, pimping my stuff in what's hopefully an amusing way. If you want to interact with me and follow me, you can find me on Twitter at Grinosaur and at Mort_post for official announcements. Hello lovelies. Did you miss my hideous vizog? Well, here it is. I want to catch up on a few things quickly at the end here. But there's something I want to leap on while the iron is hot. Now, it's not drama. It's more of a general point. Something interesting I think we discovered on the Legion of Myth livecast, vlog, whatever you want to call it. Check it out over on their channel. But in the midst of everything else that we were talking about, we covered a large amount of subjects there. We hit on something which I think is quite profound and goes to a lot of the disjunct between older gamers, grognards, and the new wave of younger critters, you know, the stream junkies, the newer gamers that have come in with 5th edition D&D. If I were to say to you, Power Gamer or Munchkin, odds are, being my audience, you would think of someone who cheats or bends the rules in one particular way or another, or tries to create the most powerful character possible, or lives out a power fantasy by creating the most absolute powerful character that they can. That form of power gaming, that form of escapism, that form of power fantasy comes about by imagining yourself as someone else who has a great deal of power or skill or effect or influence on the world. I mean, most RPGs are a power fantasy of some kind because you're playing someone who is, generally speaking, quite competent, can have an influence on the world, is caught up in important events and can leverage them to do one thing or the other. I don't think the new generation approaches power gaming in exactly the same way. This is a generation, I guess, born post-1990 perhaps, who have grown up with a lot of fan fiction. They have their own OCs, original characters, original concepts, and so on. And there's much more of a tendency to project oneself into the world, to have self-insert characters, to have Mary Sues or Gary Stews or whatever else the case might be. Self-insert characters. They don't create a character who is someone separate to them. Rather, they tend, I mean, with having to talk in generalities here, and this doesn't count for everyone, but they tend to project themselves into the world. They want to play someone who is exactly the same as themselves in a lot of ways. This is a generation to whom representation is important, though it's not so important for older generations of gamers because they understand that they're playing a character. This isn't necessarily a criticism. I'm trying to create some sort of empathy here, really, through understanding. So, old school power gaming, create a really powerful character, someone who has influence on the world. Newer generation power gaming, Munchkinism, is to self-insert into the world, and your power fantasy is that you have power and influence or aren't held back by whatever disability or whatever you've got. And that creates a huge disjunct between the two groups. Different goals, different ideas, different filters through which they examine entertainment, computer games, role-playing games in particular, where you can self-insert. I think that helps explain the different goals, the different perceptions, and the different ways in which we filter and consume media. Just as, for example, if you're a Marxist or a libertarian and you look at media, you're going to examine it through that lens. They're looking at consuming media through a very particular lens that is very different to that of people older. So that's where I think a lot of this disjunct, this conflict, this clash comes from. Most of us have known power gamers who grow out of their Munchkinism phase, who grow out of their perfect character build phase, who move on to something, not more narrativist, but characters with a bit more depth, or who aren't quite so super competent at everything, where what comes first is the character and what the character would do, who the character is, playing something very different from themselves, not an idealized version of themselves, not something or someone they wish they could be, but something more interesting with more depth, yeah, as you get further into the hobby. So, viewed from that perspective, if those old school power gamer munchkins can grow out of it and become more concerned with other things, better things, honing their art, their pastime, becoming interested in more complicated and mature themes and ideas and so on, develop their palette, put it that way. If they could do that, then this influx that we've had can and probably will do that over time and become more capable of dealing with more mature themes. So, to put it another way, a more sympathetic way, doesn't necessarily sound like it, but I don't mean it in an insulting way. A lot of these people who are arguing for things like combat wheelchairs and greater representation and so on, they're just immature gamers. I don't mean that in a mean or judgmental way. We've all tolerated munchkins of the more traditional sort. If we view it that way, if we encourage them to grow beyond their bounds, to consider more complicated and mature themes and ideas, then maybe these problems will go away a bit over time. We can only hope. Quick catch up then. I'm mostly publishing things that other people have written for me at the moment. I did a call a while back, as you might recall. That's taking up a lot of my time, more than I expected, because there was more response. So yeah, look for lots of releases through me by other people. I quite enjoy that, but it is impacting my other work now. Always do this, take on too much, and then feel overwhelmed. But yeah, catching up on stuff. Do you like the review videos? I wanted to step away from the politics and so on a bit for a while and just do something different, and I realised that they're all 5th edition books, but those are the newer ones that I've bought thanks to running Tabletopless. So do you want more of that? I will go back to reviewing old and more obscure games later on, doing the page throughs. Spoiler alert for most of the Wizards of the Coast output. But yeah, let me know what kind of stuff you do want me to cover, and we'll see how we go. Today is accounts day, so I'd better get back to it, but reviews should restart again tomorrow. Just don't expect any videos from me on Thursday directly after Tabletopless, because I'm usually pretty wiped then. Zang.
Sure, you could play one of those hoity-toity horror games where the most horrifying thing that happens is someone wearing a corset who really shouldn't. Or you could grind a zombie's face into a belt sander.
Une manie de vieux garçon, moi j'ai pris l'habitude d'agrémenter ma solitude aux accents de cette chanson. Quand je pense à Fernande, je bande, je bande. Quand je pense à Félicie, je bande aussi. Quand je pense à Léonore, mon Dieu, je bande encore. Et quand je pense à Lulu, là je ne bande plus. La bandaison, papa, ça ne se commande pas.